Hey, gorgeous humans. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. Um, for those who have been around and listened to other episodes, you know I'm big on transparency. And so my living situations have changed. So if you hear background noise, I apologize in advance. And yeah, one of the reasons why I started podcasting was because I was blown away by the language of vulnerability that I heard through other people sharing their experiences on podcast. And moving through so many major shifts over the last few years, and particularly after having a spontaneous third eye activation and Kundalini awakening experience in 2021, in June 2021, there's been moments where I've had to relearn different boundaries around what I share, how I share, the intention behind my sharing, because I realize that when I share from a place of wanting validation for my ego, so for someone to validate, oh my gosh, you've gone through this hard stuff, that feels really empty now. And also, it's such a sneaky, like tantalizing little treat to have your experience validated by other people as well. My intention for sharing, though, is I understand the uniqueness of my perspective, as everyone else does too. And understanding the depth of like a core wounding of several of those core wounds. I think there are 7 core wounds, and I can't even think of all of them right now. But realizing that loneliness is a big one, and not feeling supported for being who you are. So many of us have had to change, adapt ourselves to survive, and never really moved into a sense of authorship or authority over our own life because we were told how to be. And societally, there were roles that we felt like we need to play, and familiarly, there are roles we feel as though we've needed to play. And some of that has been unconscious expectations that have been placed on us. And therefore, expectations we then put on ourselves. And life inevitably, we call it midlife crisis, but if so many people have midlife crisis, or so many women particularly go through difficult times in perimenopause, and men also, and women experiencing chronic fatigue or complex PTSD, and we see a more conversation around mental health now than ever. And I believe that's symptomatic of a real one-sided view of what a happy life looks like, because most people don't get to experience that. And what happens, when the inevitabilities of life creep in, and, we understand that life is fragile, and time is fragile, time with loved ones is fragile, connections with loved ones is fragile, because it's based on, connection really is based on our capacity to be authentic, and we can be authentic during the learning process. And a lot of that comes back to, when you start going through experiences that other people are not going to understand, you can feel so alone in the world, so alone within your experience, and therefore like isolate. And sometimes that isolation is actually essential, because it brings you back into contact with the authenticness of who you are. And for myself, what that has looked like is, outboarding my children because I couldn't sustain the amount of work that it needed to live independent with them on the Gold Coast as a single mum with chronic pain. And all the things that brought up for me, like, you know, after my last, so with regards to my identity, so after my last relationship ended a year and a half ago, just over a year and a half ago, I came across some writings that I'd written after my marriage breakdown 11 years ago. And it was labeled, "Who am I if I'm not someone's woman?" Something like that. And I went through a new shift in identity. And then as my, you know, the last two of my children moved in with their dad just, 3 months ago, I really gifted myself this last for 3 months of not sharing my intimate experience online and really just processing some things and having a break. Having a break from showing up vulnerably online. And realizing that's also not the authentic me, but it felt authentic to take a break, and that our authenticity, like, there are parts of us that we might need to experience a polarization of in order to deeply accept. And that might continue through our life. And would we be okay with ourselves if we continue to have to, you know, sometimes review the past to receive a new perspective, and sometimes also ignore the past because it's the future that needs our attention the most. And then learning how to move from perfectionism into authenticity, because there's a delicacy in it, there's a nuance in it. And when we come back to what is essential for life, then it is essential to know what we need as individuals and how to speak it, how to communicate that, and ultimately how to resource it, and speaking that is part of resourcing it. And we can't do it alone. Like if there is a time when the financial system crashes, then the resource is not going to be money for us to source what it is that we need. The resource is going to be how well we can establish trust in relationships. So trust becomes the new resource. And the only way that we can develop trust in others is if we ultimately create the foundation of trust within ourselves. And that's coming back to looking at some of these core woundings. Like, yes, I was born alone inside my body and inside my perception and inside my life experience, and I get to share that with other people in however ways I choose to share that. And every individual is an entire universe of complexity, of polarizing light and shadows and perspectives, and learning how to be gentle with ourselves creates an atmosphere where we're able to be gentle with others, because we are all learning. We are all in process. And that's why, one of the reasons why I've shown up online and my podcasts in an unedited way, so that it's there's so much data. There is so much data that can be edited out in the pauses, in the facial movements, you know, in the body positioning, all of it. We are constantly communicating, receiving communication and data. And this is why there's been a shift away from professionalism and into authorities who have lived experience. And I say authorities really loosely because we are our own authority. And learning how to channel our power intentionally, how to resource more of our own power, our own life force. You know, some might call it God. I think of it as life spirit. There's an aspect that is interconnecting all of us. We see that through quantum physics. And there are far more spectrums of understanding and insight and data that are available to the humans who are able to attune to it. And in a large part, being in physical pain within survival mode, you know, as an experience, has closed, you know, I feel as though I've closed access to a lot of those other spectrums, the spiritual experiences, to survive, just to get through the day to day. And I think that having that contrast of not relying on that, or coming more into my physical experience, there's absolutely been a benefit to that. And that is the inability to spiritually bypass my experience, because I'm having to experience it so closely. And I think that was also a gift that Kundalini experience had, was I was no longer able to like mask, or my physical body wasn't able to mute the discomfort that it was in. And my nervous system like was far closer to the surface. But because my life and a lot of my interrelational boundaries were so misaligned to the sustainable flow of life spirit through me, through my physical body, through my soul, what it is that I was here to do, so much of my voice was stifled, and that was chosen by me. Maladaptive behavior to my environment. And that's not to blame the environment. That is to honor where the flow of my energy, I chose to put it. And it wasn't back into me. It was fighting for relationships that really could have been simpler and gentler. But because I was showing up in a way that I was adapting to situations, because I know how adaptable I am, I was changing me. I have known who I am. And that third eye experience showed me that the timing of my life has been perfect. Every interest has been perfect. I couldn't rush to be where I was. I couldn't even have trained necessarily to have had that third eye opening experience. And there's been so much anxiety since then in my physical body, my nervous system dysregulation around identity since then too, because it hasn't felt clear. It's like I have had to be in a process of conscious evolution, owning every aspect, every choice, every excuse, and the whole time not being able to deny the fact that I am in physical pain. And that physical pain becomes the loudest. at oftentimes, and it creates mental overwhelm. And you can start identifying with that. And I have. And I think having had these lived experiences, it absolutely creates new depth of perception as a practitioner. And also as someone who is, I value so deeply the scientific process, and having an experience that I could potentially put in effort to prove, and yet I have no desire to. I have no desire to. Why? Because it happened, and it would discredit the emerging identity, the ownership of who I am, which is actually, I came into this world through the lens of Mormonism, but what that Mormonism taught me is invaluable in my ability to connect with life spirit, to connect with this energy source that is the source of life, source of my life. And it was the same energy that held me through the deconstruction of leaving the church. And that was never going to happen, because my nervous system was regulated to that belief system, to Mormonism. And so even doubting that felt like it was unsafe spiritually. And so I was raised with the spiritual perception first, spiritual safety above physical safety. So to the extent where I would have given my life for the church, whatever that means. And it's this idea that we give our lives, like as mothers too, or parents, we give our lives for our children. And what that creates is us potentially not valuing our lives as much as what we, like as the Bible story says, the talents, the gifts of the talents. You know, we're given something, we're given this life, and to put your life energy on hold for the idea of the next life is to waste away this life that we have, this one life we have. And you might have the belief that there's another life after this. And also, if that belief is costing you peace in this life, then you are wasting this life for the next, for the idea of it. And it's a mental matrix because it's real for you. And I've been there and I felt that. And that's also part of what contributed to me witnessing the tree disintegrate into code while simultaneously being there. And that's because I understand that there's an aspect of our reality that's absolutely projected based on what we make it mean. And so much of that is based in who we think we are. Who are we? Why am I here? Where are we going? What is this for? And those are individual answers. They're not copy-paste plan of salvation answers. No. Plan of happiness? No. They are moving from black and white into all the shades of grey and the color spectrum and all of the spectrums that we haven't even known or seen yet. And it's blocked by our capacity to question curiously. And much of our power is hidden by the judgments that we place on others. We create these false demons based on our assumptions. And then it freezes us. And yes, it's true that stopping to observe what's going on is essential, and also stopping long enough creates functional freeze, which is really difficult to get out of, especially when you couple that with physical pain or chronic fatigue. And we've got to relearn what our will feels like, what passion feels like, what it's like to build something that isn't just forced on us by fate, but that is chosen. And it comes down to choosing the activities day to day. It comes with including it. And this isn't me just saying, hey, this is exactly what I'm doing right now. This is me saying, I am building my capacity to this, and I will continue to build my capacity to this. And that's all we can ever do, is show up in our own process and finding that support, that energy that supports us. And that might not be family. It might be friends. It might be a coworker who's like, hey, you've got this. And it might even just be you back in the mirror, or people's podcasts that you're listening to. You might be that alone. And if that's the case, that's okay. Because I have called in different friends at different times who have just been absolute earth angels when I needed some evidence, or I've built friendships online in places that felt safe, which weren't so Puritan and more aligned to the lived experience of the human. And it's interesting, this concept that it's from our pain that we create our purpose. And pain, I've had such an interesting relationship with pain over my life. And ultimately, it is the thing that's forced me to prioritize myself, even above my own children. And moving through the disintegration of an old identity and the transition into a new one, evolving my identity, evolving my reputation, evolving my experience through chosen action, through what I choose to create, what I choose to put out there. And feeling intimidated by the responsibility of owning my words and owning what I share and what I teach. And in that, challenging prejudices by just existing. One of the ways I've been able to deal with the pain is through marijuana. And I do have a medicinal marijuana license for Australia. And also, it is a plant that grows out of the ground. And I've had so much prejudice around me, from within me, from me, around this plant, that it's been hard to receive the medicine of it whilst even taking it. But when I do open myself up to deeply receive it and realize just how effective it is for me, it dispels the fear of like addiction, of my brain rotting. Oh my gosh, the number of things that people have said. And also my use of nicotine and vapes. Like, people have judged so much of that, and people who don't question other things that they consume. And it's interesting, when you start to play in that metaphysical world, you can't ignore the physical world. You cannot. And also, you understand that you interact with the physical world in a way that is different to other people. Not every human is the same, and that is to benefit humanity. And yes, we have come from some pretty gross places, the human experience, and also, like, we have so much capacity to evolve. And I trust this human experience. I see it happening. I see us being kinder to each other. There's a gentler way, a more inclusive way. And it comes with including ourselves first. It comes with advocating for ourselves first, speaking our truth, speaking our needs. What do we require? And if you've grown up in a place where it felt safer to be invisible, this is one of the scariest things to do. And same. It's scary to ask for what we need. It's scary to state what it is that we want. because we feel like we haven't been supported or loved in our desires in the past, or it was so fragile. And as we move into that vulnerability, we have to create boundaries around who we share our needs and desires with, who we who forms our community. We do have, because there is an impact from the environments that we create around us, and there is so much more impact in our relationships than almost any other aspect of life, because what we're dealing with is spiritual within our relationships. We are dealing with so much of our identity and purpose of our own lives, the use of our life force within these relationships. And so learning how to relate to ourselves first and foremost is really important, but we do that through relating with others as well. And as we practice holding capacity in our nervous system to, slowly take up more space in our communities, in our circles, show ourselves our weirdness, our quirkiness, our talents, show our vulnerabilities. Hey, this is what's real for me. And also be able to experience the spectrum of human experience, like with safe people. And when I say safe people, I mean people who aren't going to project big character judgments on you, but who will witness with a belief in the evolution, your personal evolution, witness you as you go through life, not to rescue you, but to witness you. And honestly, the people who call me on my bullshit, I'm just so grateful for, especially when they do it in such a gentle way. Like, you can tell when someone gives you feedback from a place of love, or if it's cynicism, or if it's like degrading in some way. And so much of that is how we interpret it. And I guess that's what comes down to our power, is the way we choose to interpret life will show us what our belief systems are so much. And choosing to see life as evidence of being loved and supported is just going to bring that to us even more. And so as I move through this outboarding stage of parenting, where all my children, I'm an empty nester. I've just turned 43 and I am an empty nester. I bought a surfboard and my car died. And there's so much uncertainty, and yet there's one thing that I do know for sure, and that is that I trust myself to speak my truth. I trust myself with my evolution, and to find places that are safe and supportive for myself. And it doesn't mean it needs to be a judgment on anything or any other place that's not for me. I can simply wish well and align with what is in the highest form of life spirit through me, what is going to bring life spirit even more into me, so that I have even more capacity for myself to live my life. And that will only benefit the people who are close to me and around me, not just only them, like everyone who I come into contact with. And I think that's also one reason why I've chosen to speak so vulnerably online and in podcasts, because I know my strength and resilience. Like, I know that my happiness is resilient because it's been challenged so many times. And I know that my confidence is resilient. Why? Because it's been challenged so many times, and I've gone through so many different humbling experiences. And I seem to continue to choose to soften And also, there does come a time where we say enough and we choose again. And it's essential to know when to quit and what to quit and what to keep going, and the gentleness of not forcing yourself in your pace. Authenticity is not a place that we reach, it's a way of life. And for those with severe anxiety, for nervous system dysregulation, moving in a way that is integrous to us and honest to us is going to be the thing that brings us peace. I hope that this has been a helpful insight, and I am available for one-on-one consultations. I will be releasing more course content, and also, online and in-person one-on-one sessions, consultations, packages. And that's really just designed for the individual, to the individual's needs. I have so much trust in the evolution of humanity. I trust you with your personal evolution. That is the only way forward. That the only way out of these massive power struggles in humanity, in government, and all of these other things, the only way out is literally creating ownership over our own selves and empowering individuals to be within their personal power, not by coercing them into a certain belief system. Thank you for listening, and I'm sending you all so much love.